to episode 1 of Hipsterless Hangout. We are your hosts. I'm Lola, not my real name, but that's all you need to know for now. And this is my co-host. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Theo. That is my real name. And it's not short for Theodore. I get asked that a lot. But yeah, we're Hipsterless Hangouts. We're here to talk about movies and various other things, whatever basically comes up. This is episode 1 because the wrestler didn't work twice, but we're going to come back with that next episode. And instead, we're talking about I don't even remember the year of the film, but the film The Whale. I think what was this, 2023? No, 2022?
It was pretty recent. I mean, he just this year won, or last year, or whenever the Oscars were held, won for it. So it would have been within the last year, I thought. I mean, the making of it, you know more about the technicalities of when it was made versus when it was released, but it had to have been recent. It's still on new releases on Netflix. So
Yeah. So this is the film that Darren Aronofsky did most recently. It's his big return after a few years gone. Brendan Fraser ended up winning the Academy Award. I saw it first as a new release from one of those red box machines that stand outside of Walmarts and stuff. I rented it on DVD because I missed it in theaters. I watched it. I kind of thought it was okay, but there were some things that stuck with me, and there were some things that I just didn't really understand. And so I've always thought that this was one that I wanted to discuss with someone, and I made you watch it for the first time. So, what was your first impression?
I guess what comes from it when I first think of The Whale is it being the dark ambience of it. It almost, and I said this to you before, but it almost felt like it had a cartoonish quality to it. The way that the makeup of the characters, obviously the prosthetics that Brendan Fraser had to use were obviously very fake, and but I guess the set design, it just seemed very dark. And so hence when the characters, and it was a small cast, there was Brendan Fraser, his daughter, his caretaker, the random like Jehovah's Witness who would come to the door, and it was a pretty small cast, but I would say glaring from like a set design kind of physical environmental context. That's what came to mind too, is just intensity. So everything was very pronounced from a visual standpoint. The emotions were very erratic and extreme. I would say that to answer your question simply.
Yeah, I think that the movie, it depicts obviously like this. Well, just to breeze over the plot very briefly, there's this very overweight, I mean, morbidly obese man who lives in his apartment. And I do remember that this was shot during COVID, which makes sense. It's based
Oh,
on a screenplay not a screenplay, it's based on a play. So like an actual, performing play. Um, and it's very minimal, but it's just this man in one set, and he's really overweight, and it's just kind of about his brief attempt to reconnect with his daughter, as well as basically the end of his life. And um, yeah, same with you. I thought it was kind of cartoonish. I thought it was almost purposefully exaggerated. I also thought that the prosthetics and even some of the character moments were sort of like almost intentionally bizarre, like he's trying to hit on this Jehovah's Witness guy, and he's this gay character, and then it's just even something like the name. You have the whale, which in the movie is referring to some story that his daughter wrote, but it's also a movie about a really overweight guy that's called The Whale. And it's kind of, you're referencing the character also, not just the story? I don't know. It just seemed kind of bizarre.
Yeah, and it's difficult. I mean, I will say it's a little bit difficult to go into discussing a movie that I kind of have lukewarm feelings about. I'm glad that I saw it. I'm glad that Brendan Fraser, because of his own history in Hollywood and the maltreatment, which I've been made aware of, he was kind of blacklisted for a long time, and I'm glad that he's getting the accolades now. Would I see it again? No. So going into discussing a movie which I kind of have lukewarm feelings about, but yet thinking that the accolades he's getting were deserved, I don't quite have as much to relate as I might to another movie. But of course, the themes of self-abuse and um, I can relate to that to an extent, trying to destroy yourself and unconsciously, consciously. Um, I think a lot of people, in their own ways, myself included, can extract that message of self abuse and empathize to a degree.
Yeah. And it brought up to me the question that I was thinking of, which is in the film as well as in life, do we choose our own methods of destruction based upon, I don't know, like what we gravitate towards normally? So there was a moment in the movie where he reveals a photo of him and his ex, and in his photo, you know, he's overweight in that photo. He's not obese. But, here's a man who's obviously suffered with this food thing for his whole life. And when he loses his lover, he just really dives into it. And so I was just thinking, do we as people, how much do we gauge the thing that makes us suffer and the thing that we can punish ourselves with? And then when we decide we're going to punish ourselves, we give ourselves that, so we're sort of picking our poisons, and we can either choose like drugs, or we can choose self-harm, or we can choose food, or we can choose driving dangerously. We can choose whatever we want. And then when it comes time, we know that we can give ourselves that punishment. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. I have thought a lot about that recently because there are so many examples, and some are more socially accepted than others. If you're a workaholic, for example,
Yeah.
or an exercise addict, I mean, there are behaviors, obesity not being one of them, and compulsive overeating, which are less accepted and that wreak havoc on the body to more extreme examples than others. And I guess the point, maybe now that I'm thinking of, which might interest me most about the movie, is why do some people self destruct where others have just healthier ways of not doing that? And of course, you can go back to how somebody was raised and their own their own unique chemistry, but some people just are more self-destructive. And if you look back into their childhoods, they might not seem like they had it that bad. And yet they choose this vice, which in some cases can ultimately kill them or cause some kind of permanent damage before then killing them. And it's interesting to me why some of us are just innately or not innately, it's always that question of nature versus nurture, why some of us have this proclivity to self obliterate and others don't. Why do you think that is? I mean, the easy answer would be nature versus nurture, but it's interesting to me because we got to see it live and in action with Brendan Fraser's character, of course.
Yeah. Why do I think that is? I mean, it's clearly I would say it's one of the oldest cases of just like it's a mixture of answers, but and we're not given information about this guy's past in the film, but I think we're taken to it to be implied that he was obviously living in the closet and married to a woman and had to come out in some ways and give up the relationship with the woman as well as the relationship with his daughter. And it goes back to something that I was thinking of recently, which is, you know, to what degree do compromises make everybody lose versus when we do the thing we actually want, we're almost intentionally making people suffer. So if you compromise with a loved one, let's say your wife, you compromise to raise your daughter even though you're secretly homosexual, you might be doing the best thing for two people, but you're hurting yourself. Versus if you do the thing that you want, if you go chase the guy that you're attracted to, you're making everybody suffer, including yourself. And I don't really have a point here. It's not an answer to your question. It's just another question of just like, do we as people, how do we decide what's worth pursuing for our own, selfish or whatever pursuits versus how much do we intentionally sacrifice in order to make the greater good happy? Because you could interpret this movie as he chose a gay relationship instead of his family, and that's what ultimately led to him suffering. You could interpret the movie that way. That's not me trying to like be, cancel or conservative or anything. I'm not anti-gay. I'm just saying like you could interpret the movie. If he had stayed with the woman, then his lover wouldn't have been killed and he wouldn't have been estranged from his daughter, and maybe he wouldn't have gotten overweight. I don't know. But that's obviously not what happened in the film. And so just what is it trying to say? And maybe that's partially why I think it's kind of a weird movie in itself.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of one example of a particular parent, ours, who pursued and pursued and pursued somebody who probably should never have been a parent, somebody who should never have been her spouse. And for what? Ultimately it did, I mean, without going into a whole bunch of detail about the in-between and actions that happened, and not only did it cause pain and suffering for the rest of the family, probably most significantly for me, the way that I reacted to that off and on marital dysfunctionality, which had been going on my whole life. But ultimately, it didn't work. They reconciled, and that was a self-driven decision. And while sacrificing the happiness and stability and functionality of their kin, and at the end of the day, was it worth it? I mean, there was another separation, then that parent died, and had they not been so what is the term, not nihilistic but hedonistic in a sense,
Right.
that's how it felt at the time, just indulging in what they wanted to do, things would have been drastically different. And maybe, who knows, I mean, we'll never know, but I understand the point you're making, and I hadn't thought of it in that way.
I don't know if it's supposed to be thought of in that way. I'm extrapolating a little bit here, but I do, now that you mention it, yeah, there's a clear connection to our how we were raised in our childhood, because it's the story of people who sacrifice something that could have been stable for something that they feel that they really want and then end up suffering because of it. And I mean, geez, the similarities, yeah. And then one of them dies, and you know, our mom is not dead yet, but like, yeah, it is kind of bizarre, those correlations. And so it's almost like I don't believe that the movie is saying don't pursue the thing you want. I just don't know what the movie is saying in general. And I don't know if it's trying to say anything, which is also a weird part about the movie. And the end is this open to interpretation sort of thing of, I guess this character most likely dies. And if he does, then really, what was the point, and what was the lesson, and what are we supposed to do with that? I'm not saying that movies have to depict unreality, but I sort of want to take something away from almost not every, but just a lot of what I would say are artistic explorations, and I don't take anything away from this movie at all.
I think it's difficult because I think that it's one of those movies that could maybe and that's most movies or many movies and many books and many artistic pieces, which the audience can take away different pieces. And what somebody's lesson might be about self-destruction could be somebody else's about family and the need for family and the need for maintaining a connection with your children no matter what. And so there could be different lessons learned. There was also religion which comes into it, and that was a whole kind of other not subplot, but a whole component, which whenever there's religion kind of introduced into a movie, I just kind of, my eyes glaze over and I
Yeah.
lose some level of interest because that's never been an area that I have cared to explore. So it could mean different things to different people, and that's kind of stating the obvious because most artistic pieces, that is true. Depending on whom looks at it or experiences it, it's going to potentially mean different things to different audience members. What do you think about the behavior? I do remember the extreme antagonism of his daughter. Do you think her behavior was deserved? Did you just get irritated by her? I really did not like her character, and I felt sorry for Brendan Fraser's character in dealing with her.
I think much like some other elements, it's exaggerated. I think that the point it's trying to make is, like we're saying, he chose an alternate lifestyle in her view instead of her, so he's probably leaving when she's a toddler, let's just say, and he's abandoning his partner and his daughter, when she needs him most to go pursue some other thing. And I'm sure that from her perspective, it's completely earned. We, don't have the knowledge of what really happened with them. We know from his perspective that he continued to love her and he continued to cherish this thing that she wrote, the whale, but we don't know how often he was there. We don't know how hard he tried. We don't know how much he was involved. I think we have to take it as assumption that he wasn't. And if that's the case, again, I mean, it's not making me like the character, and therefore it's not making me like the movie. If our character was a piece of shit dad, then I don't care, I don't think the actress was tremendous, and I don't think that the role was well written, but I do have to go into it with this dynamic of I I take her side. I mean, I really do. And that's coming from, like we said earlier, that's coming from people whose parents were largely absent and largely didn't have our best interest in mind. It's not like I feel bad for them now. I don't feel bad for what they went through. And I completely don't think any of it was my fault, our fault. So how are we supposed to feel bad when they're suffering? I don't know.
Yeah, I understand that. And I didn't feel sorry for him in terms of her behavior was unjustified. It's just a natural human reaction that when you see somebody being attacked and you see them being annihilated and you see them trying and being shamed and kicked when they're already down, it's just a natural human instinct to feel a bit protective, regardless of how justified that might be. And there is a part of me as an adult, an old, seasoned, you know, at the age that I am now, who wants to chastise her, but there's also the part of me that knows that no matter how old I get, there's still going to be this wounded kid who's angry. And I've certainly demonstrated that on a number of occasions. And she is quite a bit younger. I think her character was a recent grad or a recent high school.
Yeah.
How old
I
is
think
she?
like I think she's like college age. I think she's probably 19, like beginning college or so.
Right, so that's still a very tender age and not enough space and time from childhood to really have recovered from something like parental neglect and or abandonment. So it's not that I think she's in the wrong to any extent, but it's just a natural instinctual behavior to want to protect somebody who is being shamed and who is being kicked when he or she is already down and who is trying. And part of it too is that I just didn't especially care for the actress. A lot of her dialogue was really over the top with the profanity and needless insults about the Jehovah's Witness representative who had come to the house, and I didn't understand what the point was in constructing such an extreme showing of impropriety on her part. I don't think it added anything to her character or the plot. I didn't really understand what she was trying to do in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Insulting his intelligence, insulting his appearance. I mean, why? So
And
I
there's
was
one other moment that I was like, why? And it's when he reveals himself to his classroom at the end, and he finally puts on the camera and he shows them all that he's really overweight. And there's this reaction that some of them have of like, wow, you know, and then there's the reaction that some of them have of like, oh my God, and they're basically freaking out. And I'm like, would anyone do that? You know, would anyone literally fall on the floor convulsing when they saw that someone was, we see obese people like all the time in our, I go to Walmart and I see like 5 obese people, you know. I'm not saying that it's unrealistic. I'm just saying that it's kind of like, I just don't really know what the point was. I don't really know what it's trying to show me. I don't know why that's this. I understand that for him, he's literally and figuratively hiding and now he's revealing himself. But I just think that the way in which it's done is, again, this moment of cartoonish exaggeration in a film with already cartoonish exaggeration. And the daughter, yeah, the way she tries to seduce this Jehovah's Witness guy and the way that she's just comically insulting. It's like taking everything and nudging it up to an 11 or even a 12. And I just don't know if that type of tone works for me in a movie that's supposed to be really somber and emotional and human. I don't know.
mhm. Yeah, there are ways of, I mean, that's why cartoon, well, you know what, Bambi is actually a really sad movie. So is Lion King. So I'm not going to say that I haven't had emotional reactions from cartoons, but I feel like more of an understated, such as what we'll discuss next week, a more understated, very human experience when people are just overwhelmed to the point of inactivity or dumbfoundedness. That happens too. And having this, I'm sorry, but this little brat come into the frame, and even if her anger is justified, you're making me empathize with you less by abusing people who don't deserve it, such as this Jehovah's Witness. And I don't know what his role even was supposed to add necessarily. I think there was a plot that I just didn't really follow very well about his own family and how he was treated by them and his connection to Brendan Fraser's character. I just didn't get it. But the over the top quality, right, that's not my favorite piece to watch.
No, and I almost think that part of the movie is trying to say we're all bad people, or we're all broken people in these broken situations, and I get that, but I also don't really see the point. And also, it's a movie where not everyone is bad. I would argue the nurse character, uh, who is his only friend, is pretty much a flawless good person. She's not. She's the only one in the movie who's not painted with some sort of brush of indignity. What did you think of her character or her representation as a character in the movie?
She was the sister of his lover, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
Well, she was, I remember her enabling him. I mean, she was taking care of him, but also buying him really unhealthy food and sitting next to him on the couch as he was stuffing his face. And that was another component that I couldn't really figure out. Um, it was just a movie of a lot of emotional mazes for me that kind of led to dead ends. And I'm glad he at least had somebody. And the fact that she was his lover's sister, I'm sure that was it was his only connection to this lover of his who had this partner of his who had passed away. And so I can certainly understand that, and I'm glad that he at least had somebody. But with that being said, she was enabling him in some cases, and I think the emotional burden of being responsible for somebody who is at death's door um, wasn't fair for anybody involved, including her. And I'm glad that she was there, I suppose, but couldn't really, I didn't click with that character either. I couldn't click with any of them.
No, they're all unrelatable. Um, there was something I thought of during that, what you were just saying, and now I lost it. But yeah, I didn't connect with anyone in the movie, and I don't know if we were even supposed to, which is just a weird thing to, again, to do in a movie that's supposed to be very human, arguably. It's supposed to really touch us. Oh, I know what I was going to say. One of the big legacies of this movie now, besides Brendan Fraser's win, this movie is like one of those kind of legendary things that college bros might put on for each other to sort of make fun of the other's reaction to the food eating scenes, because like they are pretty gross. How did those work for you, and did you have any reaction to those?
Oh, when he's gorging himself, or
Yeah, like he like takes a there's a scene he takes a pizza and folds it into fours and just eats it like a sandwich. And it, I mean, I cannot watch something like that. It does kind of gross me out. It's probably one of the few things that if it like makes a really visceral reaction. Did those do anything for you?
not so much. I mean, I put the phone down because I was watching it on my phone, as I watch most all content on my phone. And I put the phone down a couple of times, I think, during those scenes, not deliberately, but I just had other things to do at the time. And the slovenly element of it, the messiness, that is, of course, unappealing to watch. But the compulsivity, for people who have addictive personalities and who have that proclivity to be really compulsive, that compulsive behavior of just getting into this zoned out mind frame of something that's really destructive and it was a sad scene to watch. Those were sad scenes to watch, and they were meant to again be extremely slovenly and over the top and indulgent and messy. And so that um, I can't say that I could recently relate to that or anything, but getting in the zone of just compulsive behavior and it being out of control. It was a sad watch, I suppose. Those scenes were tragic.
Yeah. No, that's, I mean, I think you're emoting to it right. I think that the people who watch it and just get grossed out by the actual act are probably not emoting to the character. And I guess unfortunately I wasn't emoting to the character because I was just I'm like, I have to look away. I just can't watch that. It's one of the few things that and someone injecting themselves with a needle or any close up of a needle going into skin. I'm like, I just can't watch this. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's true. I hate needles. I didn't always, but when I was in the hospital as a teenager and I for something uh a electrolyte imbalance and I had to get daily shots to test my phosphorus levels. And it was just ever since then, going to the dentist when I need to get like an anesthetic, um, I can't watch those either without just getting overly squeamish. But I guess with the compulsive overeating scenes, if you substitute the food with maybe a drug or alcohol or some other reckless compulsive behavior that people do, that's why the food scenes almost seemed um they almost seemed irrelevant because food was his drug. And I relate to the underlying compulsivity of that. And it can be that kind of behavior can be prevalent with any other vice. It's the underlying compulsive addictive nature that to me elicited the tragic element of it. The food was almost irrelevant.
Yeah, I think it's meant to, exactly, it's meant to stand in for any vice which we might be using. And I think it's taken to such an exaggeration because you can take any vice to those exaggerations. Um, but what did you think of the ending? I don't know if we should spoil it or not, but it's hard to talk about the movie without talking about the ending because the ending's kind of open to interpretation. Do you like, yeah, I guess I don't know if we should do spoilers on this or not. What do you think we should do?
I've never been bothered by spoiler alerts.
Yeah,
I don't mind it for myself when I'm viewing content, and so I think I wouldn't mind spoiling it for you guys if
yeah. Go watch the movie. If you want to watch it, go watch it because we're gonna spoil it.
just a warning, we're going to introduce the end, and so we can begin with you.
Yeah. So in the end, he is being ushered to stand, and people are saying like, "Come on, stand," and he hasn't stood without his walker the whole film. And as he gets up, he sort of stands. He manages, and then it literally has him begin to float off the ground with this sort of bizarre expression on his face, like he's dying or like he's in this moment of pure elation. And he literally floats off the ground, and then it cuts to black. And I think it's impossible to not take that as he dies. But at the same time, do you think that they're trying to show some sort of like transcendence of his character during death, or do you think he dies, or what do you think happens there?
Yeah, I think he did die. I think at the same time he was having this moment of reconnection with his daughter. He was having this maybe moment of self-acceptance. This deep understanding that he ended up in the situation that he did. He's accepted culpability and responsibility, but he did not do it deliberately to cause anybody pain. Maybe it's the looking forward to the element if one believes in the afterlife of potentially reconnecting with his partner who was deceased. So I think it was multifaceted, but I was not deeply moved, I hate to say.
Oh, I mean, and I just was like, that was my reaction. And also, I don't know if you've seen it. I don't feel like I've heard anyone talking about this. It's the exact same ending to the movie Birdman, which came out in 2015, in which he has troubles relating to his daughter, and in the end, she thinks that she sees him flying. It's the exact same ending, and I don't feel like that's been discussed. Birdman, a far superior movie, with literally the exact same ending. So I don't know. That's just my own thing.
That Darren, is that Darren again, or is that, I don't
No,
know that movie. You know?
no, that's it's what's his name? His last name is Iñárritu. I don't remember his first name. It's like it's three names, but he is a Spanish film director that made Amores Perros and Babel and 21 Grams. But yeah, he's a really interesting Spanish film director who won Michael Keaton his Oscar for Birdman. But yeah, in the end of Birdman, spoiler alert, Birdman might fly away, and in the end of The Whale, Brendan Fraser's character might fly away, and it's just the same ending.
Yeah, I mean,
Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, that's his name.
okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with him. Yeah, I think there are, I mean, I just hate to dog a movie that did so well for an actor who I respect. And maybe obviously that's my own personal drive to want Brendan Fraser to do well and to have sympathy for people in self-destructive, compulsive, lonely, isolating situations. That's what I want to take from the movie, is that at the end of the day, Brendan Fraser, what is his name in the movie? I don't even know.
I don't remember. We didn't do any research, if that's not clear.
Sorry, The Whale, and all cast and directors involved. But that's what positive elements I want to take from the movie, is that Brendan Fraser did really well in portraying a self-destructive character who was isolated, lonely, sad, but who was still trying at the end of his life. And he was doing well professionally. He was an English teacher and doing well at it. He was making an effort to reconnect with his daughter. And that kind of self-abuse, I think a lot of people can empathize with it. I did to an extent to a different degree, in different ways. And I think he did a good job of portraying it. But what would you give it? A star rating?
Yeah.
If we're going to be doing that, what would you give it on a scale, if you're interested in attributing like a numerical value to it?
Yeah, I do think we should do ratings. I know we didn't discuss that previously. So are we going out of 4 or 5? I always wonder.
Oh, how about out of 10?
Oh, okay. I mean, probably like a 2.5. Honestly, I think that I tend to go pretty low because the ending, like I said, I really feel like it's taking something else. And then I think besides a few really visceral moments, I just walk away from the film saying like, I don't even know what this really is. I pretty much don't like it. Maybe I would go 3. I'd be interested in rewatching it at some point eventually, but I don't think the filmmaking is even all that good. That was the other thing that struck me. One of my biggest takeaways after seeing it was I don't think that this needed to be made by someone who is arguably like a wonderful independent filmmaker. The camera work, some of the other stuff, like everything besides the acting, I would describe as mediocre at best. And so when you take that into consideration of this is a multiple award-winning film director on his 10th or 9th feature film, that's why I rate it so low. What about you?
Yeah, similar. I would say a 2.5. That sounds pretty on point. I do like this director's work. I liked The Wrestler. Black Swan is not one of my favorite movies, but it was a beautifully shot movie. Much respect to that. And The Whale just didn't, again, I want to take away certain positive elements to it, or from it. but the garish quality, the extremes in terms of the character behavior and development, and it just borders on being really unrealistic and overly and unnecessarily exaggerated. There's a reason action genre, fantasy, science fiction, those are not my favorite genres. And so over exaggeration has just never really clicked all that much with me. This was a drama, and I think there could have been things approached in a much less garish, blatant, more delicate way, and still to get the point across, and maybe even better. So
Yeah.
I would give it, yeah, I would give it a 2.5.
Okay, well, unless you have anything else to say, I think we can tell people what we're gonna watch next and final thoughts, if you have any.
I don't have any final thoughts on The Whale. If you are a fan of Brendan Fraser, he did do a good job. He did win an Oscar for it, and I think that I want to say that it was deserved. I don't have anything to add beyond that. Next week, we're going to be discussing The Wrestler. And so we hope to share our thoughts about this very dynamic movie, which for years and years has been a favorite of mine. Much respect to this movie, and that's going to be our next on the list.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks for watching, and that's what we'll be back with.
All right, take care and peace out from here on Hipsterless Hangout.
Don't be hipster, but do hang out.